This is an historic moment. Never has humanity's future been so closely entwined with environmental concerns. This is urgent. Our climate is changing. Natural resources are running out. Biodiversity is collapsing. Our house is on fire. We all know it. Everyone is talking about it. Now we must act. Practical, high-impact solutions already exist. Now more than ever, we need industrial players to accelerate their deployment. But other problems remain to be solved. We must do all we can to invent the solutions of tomorrow. We must go beyond transition. There is no time left for gradually changing our methods. To reconcile the environment and human development, we must make decisive, difficult and structuring choices. That is why Veolia aspires to a larger, higher, more challenging ambition: ecological transformation. Ecological transformation means genuinely adapting our patterns of production and consumption. It means placing ecology at the heart of every process, every assessment, every decision. It means developing radical, meaningful solutions to meet humanity's existential challenges. Decarbonizing industry to combat climate warming, promoting the circular economy to combat resource depletion, decontaminating the air, water and soil, protecting biodiversity, and creating a more resource-efficient agriculture. None of this would be possible without the coordinated action of all our stakeholders, our 180,000 employees, of course, but also our customers, our shareholders, our partners, and wider society as a whole. We are committed to delivering a multifaceted performance and convinced that economic, social, and environmental concerns must form an indivisible whole. Decontaminating, sanitizing, purifying, recycling, recovering, conserving, and facilitating access to resources, Veolia has always worked to create solutions capable of building a better, more sustainable future for all. Today, we want to become the benchmark company for ecological transformation. Our ambition is huge, but so is our determination. Ecological transformation, that is our purpose.
Hello and welcome to this webinar organized by Veolia, where we will discuss why and how ecological transformation in the water sector is key to tackle the effects of a growing climate change. Environmental issues have never been so evident or their consequences so palpable for the world's population. The climate crisis is a fact, and water is a primary medium by which we feel its effects. With just a week to go before the UN International Climate Conference on climate change, COP26, takes place in Glasgow, water will be high on the agenda of the Congress. As the video we just saw demonstrates, Veolia is strongly committed to ecological transformation, essential in the face of global warming. This phenomenon is unprecedented. Is an unprecedented challenge for cities and local communities worldwide. We need to strive towards ensuring greater water security by protecting vulnerable water systems and mitigating the impacts of water-related hazards, such as floods and droughts. In this webinar, I will be accompanied by Veolia's top water experts and some of their distinguished clients to talk about these topics more in depth, focusing especially on three vital solutions, which are wastewater reuse, desalination, and digitalization, as ways to alleviate and adapt to the growing effects of global warming. But before we dive in, I would like to inform the audience that you may send in your questions, as we will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So please do so using the webinar platform. There's a tool on the right-hand side of your screen. So, and our speakers will do their best to answer your questions at the end of the webinar. To introduce climate change and understand a little bit more why water is so vulnerable in the face of this phenomenon, I'd like to welcome Geneviève Leboucher, Senior Vice President of Access to Water and Sanitation at Veolia. Geneviève, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Olivia, for this introduction. I'm very pleased to be here today to talk about water and climate change. First, to illustrate why climate change affects the water cycle, I would like to start with three numbers: 50, 5, 50. 50 because 50% is the expected increase in water demand in the first half of this century. 5 because 5 billion people are expected to live in water scarcity areas in 2050. And 50 also because this is the percentage in the past 20 years of flooding disasters among all weather-related disasters. 50, 5, 50. A good way to remember that water is at the heart of climate change. Firstly, climate change will speed up the global water cycle. Global warming is already inducing changes in climate everywhere. 1 degree Celsius increase means 7% increase in water evaporation, which means huge changes in the physics of the water cycle. This will lead to another repartition of water all over the globe, more water when it rains and less water in other places. Secondly, the population growth is making the situation more critical. Water is at the center of all human activities. Remember that the cities were created in places where water was available. There is no economy without water. And water demand is increasing to sustain population growth and economic development. And this increase has serious implications in the urban water demand. Thirdly, even now, water appears to be a marker of climate change impact. And water is already at stress in many places all over the world, with extreme events and water scarcity. For example, flood-related disasters have increased by 134% in the last 20 years. Water availability is also becoming more variable and less predictable. By 2050, more than 5 billion people are expected to face inadequate access to water at least 1 month per year. As a result, urban water management is one of the urban services most affected by the impact of climate change. It threatens the capacity of service providers to deliver safe drinking water, to protect rivers and oceans, as well as protecting people and assets from flooding. Utilities have no choice but to adapt to climate change. And they have to adapt now. This is about adaptation. And how about mitigation? Utilities also contributes to up to 50% of the greenhouse gas emission of the cities. Therefore, it must be addressed if we want to make a difference. And they have to contribute to the city's mitigation plan by decreasing their own emissions. So a big challenge in front of our water world to adapt and mitigate. The good news is that the vast majority of adaptation and mitigation solutions already exist. At Veolia, we want to provide radical and meaningful solution with and for our stakeholders. The first thing is to protect the water resource. All actions have to be taken to save the resource. Sometimes this is not enough. And today we will explore 3 potential levers. And again, they are not the only one. The 3 levers we will explore are wastewater reuse, greener desalination, and digitalization.
Thank you very much, Geneviève, for your introduction. And a quick mention before we go on is that this webinar is being recorded, so you will be able to access it after the event. As you mentioned, Geneviève, with a rapid increase in the world's population and urbanization, as well as global warming, water is becoming more and more scarce. But thankfully, we have solutions or levers, as you said, to counteract. And reusing wastewater offers a possibility to conserve this precious resource. To open up our roundtable, where Geneviève will also take part, I'd also like to welcome Pierre Ribaud, General Manager of Veolia's French water business. But before we give the floor to Pierre, Geneviève, can you tell us a bit more about the current state of wastewater reuse?
Okay. The reality is this. Today, 3.6 billion people face inadequate access to water at least 1 month per year. And it will be 5 billion in 2050. Water availability is becoming more variable and less predictable. And 1 country out of 5 will have to face severe droughts in the future. Population growth, growing needs to sustain development, the variability of precipitation, all these evolutions play against the availability of water. So it's an absolute priority to preserve water. The first thing to do is to start with actions like improving the drinking water efficiency or to decrease the water demand. But sometimes, as I said, it's not enough. And cities have to investigate all the potential solutions that exist, and water reuse is one of these solutions. Veolia believes it is one solution of the future. And Veolia has been pushing this solution for now more than 20 years all over the world. It is already used safely in many countries, but today, less than 4% of the wastewater produced is currently reused. When we think about energy or waste, recycling is a given. And we can admit that it is not really the case for as far as water is concerned. So why not make water recycling a must-have?
Geneviève, as you pointed out in your presentation, only 4% of wastewater produced in the world is currently reused. How about in water-stressed countries?
Well, as a whole, more than 100 million cubic meters of water are already recycled each day. It is used for various purposes, depending on the local needs and the local regulation, such as crop irrigations, in industry, for cooling or in boilers. It can be used as well to recharge groundwater or surface reservoirs. So many examples. The first example I would like to develop in particular is Windhoek, the capital of Namibia. It has been producing drinking water from wastewater since 1968. Today, up to 30% of the city's needs is covered by recycled water. And it has been more than 50 years since Namibia implemented this solution, which has not caused any health problems at all. The idea has been copied in California, in Singapore, and Singapore's water needs are now covered at 40% by recycled water. And it even has its own name, the New Water, an interesting name. It is expected to rise to 55% by 2060. Other examples? Well, the champion is definitely Israel, with 90% of its water which is recycled. But we can think as well at Abu Dhabi for irrigation and watering, in China, in industry, in Durban and Sydney, municipal wastewater is treated to be reused by local industries. In Europe, we have examples, many examples in Italy and Spain. Well, so many examples all over the world. It works, and it works for a long time now.
Thank you, Geneviève. And now to learn a bit more about the situation in France and Europe, I'd like to ask Pierre a question. Pierre, you are head of Veolia's water business in France. What is the current situation in the country, and what are the obstacles to wastewater reuse that you are currently facing?
Hi, Olivia. So Geneviève mentioned that only 4% of wastewater is reused, recycled worldwide. In France, it's only 0.2%. So even if we have great disparities in the distribution of resources, our country has historically been rather spoiled with large groundwater tables and many perennial rivers. The problem is that situation is deteriorating fast. It is a fact that water quality and quantity is being seriously affected by climate change. Within the next 20 years, compared to the past period, groundwater tables will replenish between 20 and 30% slower. Surface water will be at least 30% below the summer level we have experienced in most French regions. And extreme floodings will happen more frequently, causing great damages as we've seen recently. We have to take action now with our customers and all our stakeholders for the present and future generations. Now, as far as water scarcity is concerned, water reuse is part of the solutions, and we can consider that for a reuse project to be successful, we need to master 4 levels: technical, institutional, financial, and societal. Technically speaking, there is no obstacle. International references demonstrate that making drinking water or even ultra pure water from almost any kind of municipal effluent has been mastered. And at Veolia, we know how to deliver these solutions efficiently. But as until recently, we consider that we were a country that did not lack water, or only in a very episodic or localized way. All the other levers have long remained obstacles. From an institutional point of view, we have a regulation in place since 2010 for reuse in irrigation, but without real ambition. From a financial point of view, we are missing a sort of incentive system for the reuse of treated wastewater for industrial and irrigating farmers. And finally, from a societal point of view, we are still lagging behind due to the lack of positive communication on the benefits to be expected from reuse, as well as on the control of the treatment processes in place and associated risk. That being said, that last point is less and less valid, as surveys show that people accept reused water in the context of water scarcity. Even in France, where 83% of them would say yes to reuse water. Plus, we start seeing the public authorities at the highest level taking up the issue, notably via the adoption of a bill last year on the fight against waste and for the circular economy. which aims to promote the use of non-conventional water sources like rainwater and reuse. Therefore, we are at a turning point in France, the objective being to multiply by 3 the use of non-conventional water by 2025, starting with some pilots and test projects. To name a few, Saint-Maxime in France, treated wastewater is used to water green spaces. In Corsica, in Bonifacio, for golf courses. In Deauville, Calvados, for urban cleaning. And in Narbonne area, Languedoc, for drip irrigation for vineyards. It is a good start. That being said, we need much more to face the upcoming water challenges in France.
Pierre, as you mentioned, already 83% of the French population is willing to drink reused water. So why, in your opinion, is there still some hesitation to implement this solution in France and in the rest of Europe?
Yes, you're right, Olivia. Yeah, there is still some hesitation as it is difficult for us as human beings to experience the change in and from climate, as our relation to it is more linked to weather, the weather today, rather than to climate. But as I said earlier, things are changing and we're excited to be a part of the first project in Europe consisting of the reuse of treated water for indirect drinking water production. That project is being implemented in France. It's the Jourdain project by Vendéo, a local water public authority that addresses a critical need, the reuse of wastewater in a water deficient area. This unique project in Europe aims not only to provide a reliable source of drinking water for the future, but also to reduce our clients' environmental footprint.
That sounds really, really interesting. Let's find out a bit more about the Jourdain project with a testimony by Jérôme Bertoli, General Manager of Vendéo.
I am Jérôme Bertoli, Head of Vendéo. I'm very glad to have the opportunity to participate to this webinar to prepare the next COP26 and present our Jourdain project. Vendéo is a non-profit body in charge of water supply in the French department of Vendée on the western coast, with 600,000 inhabitants and 50 million cubic meters of drinking water produced per year. Water supply in Vendée is highly depending on surface water and surface reservoirs, which are already impacted by climate change. We have experienced in the past 20 years severe water drought, and most of conventional investments have been already undertaken in Vendée, including very effective savings programs. In the near future, 100,000 inhabitants could be concerned by the risk of drinking water shortage on the coastal area during the very dry year. Today, we cannot afford having millions of cubic meters of treated wastewater be lost in the oceans. Considering the large volume of treated wastewater available and discharged directly in the ocean from the northwest coastal touristic zone during the summer, indirect potable reuse, IPR, seems very interesting to explore. This is the Jourdain project. The intended reuse scheme in Vendée aims to partly refill the Jourdain reservoir with reclaimed water from the wastewater treatment plant of Les Sables d'Olonne, located 20 kilometers away. This solution could provide an additional volume up to 2 million cubic meters. That is to say, half of the storage capacity of the Jourdain reservoir. The problem is that while other countries in Europe have used reclaimed water for aquifer recharge, Belgium, Spain, Germany, there is no such reference in France, and currently no regulatory framework for it, neither for IPR. The practice of indirect potable reuse is not yet covered by the current French nor European regulation that only authorize uses for irrigation purpose. Jourdain will be the first of this kind in Europe for surface water augmentation, and as such is carried out by the collectivity as an open demonstrator for experimentation. Jourdain has to demonstrate and to guarantee that IPR will lead to limited impact, compliant with all water uses, recreational activities, and drinking water production. The objective is to build the installations and then to acutely monitor the system in operation for 3 to 5 years, and then decide whether or not to go to the full-scale program. Beyond technical aspects, governance and social issues are prominent. Vendeo has launched coordinated actions to raise enforcement, confidence, and mobilization at a large scale of the stakeholders. That needs to be federated from local communities and drinkable water direct consumers to national institutions and health services. Jourdain will be soon a reality as the tertiary treatment unit designed by Veolia is under construction. I will be very glad to be in touch with any person interested in this project. Thank you very much.
We'd like to thank Jérôme for his testimony. And now a question for Pierre. So the construction and operation of the refining unit of the Jourdain project was and has been entrusted to Veolia by Vendeo. How is the water produced by the plant must be of the highest quality? How, Pierre, do you manage this? How is it achieved?
Yes, indeed, Olivia. The water that will be produced will be of very high quality. We have made strict commitments to meet the specifications set by Vendeo regarding the environmental and health objective of the project. We will recover the water leaving the Sables-d'Olonne wastewater treatment plant, which is already effectively treated for discharge into the sea. And in addition to the traditional macro pollution treatment, the refining process, a sort of polishing, if you will also make it possible to significantly reduce salinity, microbiological compounds, micropollutants such as pesticides, pharmaceutical or industrial compounds. The refined water will then be returned to the Jaunet reservoir in complete safety for the environment and for users. To reach this level of commitment, we are not starting from scratch, and we rely on more than 20 years of know-how and feedback on this type of advanced treatment carried out on projects abroad, as mentioned earlier by Geneviève in some specific countries. This fantastic project will demonstrate to the stakeholders that the water quality objectives requested can be guaranteed by the implementation of advanced and well-controlled treatment technologies. It will also allow us to support innovation via research and development partnership in order to continue to develop the solution that will enable us to better respond to future challenges in terms of access to water resources.
Thank you, Pierre. With this, we conclude our first roundtable. But before we move on to our second one, I would like to remind the audience that they can send in their questions for our speakers using the webinar platform. In our second roundtable, we will discuss how technological innovations are still helping to protect and enhance water resources, but this time through desalination. As we have seen in the first roundtable, reusing wastewater is a viable alternative for many cities worldwide. Yet, however, others who are closer to the sea prefer to use seawater and to tackle water scarcity through desalination. Given that less than 3% of the water on Earth is freshwater, with only 1% in liquid form, the oceans are fantastic resources for us humans. Desalination has been around for decades, and yet in the last few years we have seen huge innovations, especially in improving the plant's energy consumption and environmental footprint. Before we welcome our guests, I would like to ask Geneviève if she has any insights on desalination that she would like to share with us.
Thank you, Olivia. Desalination is another interesting alternative to improve access to water in some region in the world, and usually when everything has been done before. The desalination market is primarily driven by the Gulf market. We have many projects in Saudi Arabia, in the Emirates. These countries are heavily reliant on seawater desalination. We see also projects in Israel, Morocco, Tunisia, Egypt, and other countries like the USA need desalination to treat brackish water for municipal supplies. When we think about desalination, we usually think about high intensive energy treatments. And of course, when these countries decide to choose desalination, they have no other choice if they want to have water. Today, we are talking about climate change, decarbonation, and we need to have in mind that desalination of today is not the same as the one from the past. It is worth having a close look at the recent innovations that have been made to the process of desalination, first to improve energy efficiency, to reduce the environmental footprint of the plants, and to lower the cost of water produced. CIDEM Veolia is a world leader in desalination with a track record of innovations that have shaped the market today. Of course, you will hear about the barrel, which is a real game changer, but not only. Veolia has already deployed 2,300 desalination plants, mainly in water-stressed coastal areas. The smallest plants are installed on islands, such as the Canary Island, and the most complex systems in the Middle East.
Thank you so much, Geneviève. Now I would like to welcome Vincent Boujat, Vice President of Veolia Water Technologies Techno Hub and Managing Director of CIDEM, which is Veolia's business unit specialized in desalination, as well as Philippe Polissin, CEO of the Sharikia Desalination Company in Oman. I hope I pronounced it perfect. Well, hello. Thank you both for being with us today. This question, my first question, would be for Vincent. Can you tell us a bit about the desalination market and how it has evolved over the last years?
Sure, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. The desalination market is really a Middle East-centric market because locally there is absolutely no resource, and water scarcity has been the driver to grow desalination when in the 60s the oil industry has started to really pick up. There was no water for hotels, for industry, no nothing, and the former technology that was used in the ships, in the marine ships, has been put on the land to do land-based desalination plants. The beginning was a bit simple. And those desalination plants were thermal plants, meaning that they were using heat from a boiler to evaporate seawater and produce steam. And once this steam is condensed, it gives pure fresh water like rainwater. So this was how we used to do desalination in the early days. It was not that an economic process because with a boiler and a desalination plant, basically you would need something like 10 kilo of fuel for each and every cubic meter that you produce. So that's a significant energy consumption. But then later in the development of the industry, engineers started to combine power plants and desalination plants. And that's from the 70s, let's say, for during 40 years up to 2010 and a little more, all large base desalination plants were combined with power station. And what happens is that when you produce electricity, in fact, the efficiency of turning heat from fuel into electricity is not that good. At best, it can be 40 to 50%. So there is a lot of heat that is released by power stations, and it is low-grade heat, but it's still good enough for desalination. So this is how it has been, desalination has been used for 40 years, combined with power station. At the beginning, the desalination, the thermal desalination units were multi-stage flash MSF units, and that was prevailing on the market up to 2000, roughly. And then it has been replaced by multiple effect, which is a process that consumes 3 times less electricity, which is cheaper to build. And so it started to prevail and dominate the market. CIDEM, Veolia, has been leading the development of this technology, the MED, towards large capacity. And this has been disrupting the MSF market from, let's say, 2005 and for something like 10 years. So from 2005 and during 10 years, all the plants, it was no longer MSF, but MED, thanks to CIDEM Veolia technology. This combination of power and water has allowed to reduce significantly the electrical consumption because you put fuel on the one hand and you get electricity plus water. And when you do the calculation on how much electricity is the cost of water, in a combined plant, it's around 10 to 15 kilowatt hour per cubic meter. And that was the case in the years 2000, something like that. And the cost of water produced by those large plants was in the range of $0.8 per cubic meter, less than $1 for 1,000 of liters. So that's the price of desalination in 2000. So thermal desalination has been prevailing for quite a long time, but in fact it could not compete with reverse osmosis. Reverse osmosis is another technology. We no longer evaporate seawater. We filtrate it through membranes, special membrane with very narrow pores through which you can only pass water, H2O, and no salt. So this is separating fresh water from salty water. And the thing is that this process has a reduced electrical consumption compared to the 10 to 15 kilowatt hour I was talking about. RO needs only 3 to 4 kilowatt hour per cubic meter. So thermal could not compete, and RO has replaced thermal on most of the large plants in the Middle East. And from 2010 onwards, we have seen only large RO plants for municipal needs. The CIDEM CIDEM Veolia is a very strong actor in this market. CIDEM is a 50-year-old company, and its DNA is like Veolia DNA. It's about innovation, opening new paths, creating value for our customer and for the environment with ideas, new designs, R&D, and so on. This company has built something like 6 million cubic meter in the world of daily capacity, 6 million of fresh water produced every day, sorry, and is as such a clear leader of the market. CDEM is still very active and very successful. We are currently building 3 major desalination plants, one in Bahrain, a little bit more than 200,000 cubic meter per day. In Ad-Dur, it will be completed next year. Another one in Rabigh, Saudi, western part of Saudi Arabia, and it will be completed this year. It's a big one, 600,000 cubic meter per day. And finally, in Al Quwain, one of the seven United Arab Emirates. In Al Quwain, we are currently building a large desal unit, also a desal plant, 680,000 cubic meter per day, and it will be completed next year. So you see a very active, booming market, and CDEM Veolia very active on that. The cost of the water produced by those plants, you remember the $0.8 I was talking about a few minutes back, is down to around $0.50 per cubic meter. So this is telling you how much progress has been done in the cost of desalinated water, down to $0.50 per cubic meter. And in terms of carbon footprint, we shall say a few words about that, because you can imagine that the oldest plant I was talking about, using a boiler and a thermal unit with their 10 kilo of fuel per cubic meter, was quite intense in terms of CO2 emission. Those plants were emitting something like 30 kilo of CO2 per cubic meter. 30. When we started to combine with power and water plants, the footprint went down to 4 to 6 kilo of CO2 per cubic meter. And now the latest plant that I'm talking about, RO plants in the Middle East, are using, their specific consumption is about 3 kilowatt hour per cubic meter. In addition to that, they are using a little bit of photovoltaic to reduce the carbon energy that they need. So overall, these plants are down to something like 1 kilo only of CO2 per cubic meter. So this is showing the evolution of the industry, not only making the water, desalinated water, more affordable, but also reducing the environmental footprint of this technology.
Thank you, Vincent. And speaking of energy efficiency, can you tell us a bit more about recent innovations in desalination, especially related to optimizing energy consumption and reducing environmental footprint?
Sure. Yes, the seek for lowest energy consumption is at the heart of R&D for desalination. And it's very much related to membrane improvement, to energy recovery system improvement. And we at Veolia have been working on all these topics. And I would mention a few of them, which are the most important. We have been working on pre-treatment, making the pre-treatment more efficient. You know that in desalination with membrane, all the difficulties to change first seawater, which is normal water, into something that is looking like mineralized water, very clean bottle of mineral water. This is the type of water that can go through the membrane. So to change seawater to that mineral water, you have to do some pre-treatment, and the efficiency is quite key to the success of the process. So we've been working a lot of that, combining, making more compact this pre-treatment. And recently we have worked and developed a new system for the membrane itself. The name is the barrel. And in fact, basically, instead of having a big building with all the membrane in pressure vessels, we combine all this in one single shell, which is a metallic shell, sustaining the pressure with all the membranes installed inside. And this makes it quite compact. It is a reduced footprint. It is safer because you no longer have a lot of small connections between high pressure vessels. And it's, above all, it is a digital system because to monitor what's happening inside stainless steel or steel vessel, you cannot see unless you have sensors. And we have developed smart sensors, smart connectors that we put inside the membrane when we lock the membrane into the vessel. And then during the lifetime and operation of the system, these sensors will report to the control system what is the performance of each and every membrane, thus allowing the operators to anticipate, to localize, to locate where the defect, if any, comes from, and to anticipate maintenance operations so that he is saving operation time and is taking more advantage of his asset.
Thank you so much, Vincent. I was going to ask you more about the barrel technology, but I think you've covered it. Now I will ask, my next question goes to Philippe. You are the CEO of the Sharqiya Desalination Company that operates the Oman Sur Desalination Plant. Could you first of all tell us a bit about the state of water in the Gulf region?
Yes, thank you, Olivia. It is Sharqiya Desalination.
Oh, sorry.
So, several countries most exposed in water stress are in the Middle East. And the management of the natural resources is a strategic element for the countries here in the Gulf countries. The 5 million inhabitants in Oman couldn't survive without desalination, as 95% of the water consumed here in Oman is coming from the ocean. I was listening to the first roundtable carefully and found the topic related to reuse of wastewater very interesting. To me, water reuse and desalination go hand to hand, as everything has to be done to preserve the water resources, especially in this part of the world where we face a lot of scarcity of resources. It is true that we have embraced desalination. However, we are dealing with recycling wastewater for many years now, especially for irrigation, landscaping, and also in some cases for district cooling. And this is very interesting for the district cooling, because if you had to prepare desalination water for this district cooling, it would cost you or need you 5 times more energy. So this is a very interesting way to reuse the wastewater in the region, and it contributes to protect and to give a better way to reuse the water. We need to know that everything has to be done to give it a second chance to the water to be reused.
Thank you, Philippe. And so it sounds like the Oman Sur Desalination facility that you help manage is playing a crucial role in the region. Could you tell us a bit more?
Yes, you are right, Olivia. The plants help to fight against the depletion of the limited groundwater resources we have in the region. And we process almost 300,000 cubic meters of seawater here every day. And this is to provide water to 600,000 people in the region of Sharqiya, which is the eastern province of Oman. Vincent mentioned that our plant that was built by Veolia in the past is exceptional on many aspects. Of course, we have the barrel here, but I would like to point out 3 major points that makes our plant, I would say, a bit special and interesting. So the plant first was built in 2 phases. The phase 1 was built in 2007. and its capacity was to take roughly 200,000 cubic meter of water. And the originality, the specific design of this phase one of the plant is that we are using what we call beach wells. The beach wells, we have 31 beach wells that have a depth of 80 meters roughly. And it procure pre-treated water to the plant and almost ready to be fed to the membranes. As Vincent explained a bit earlier, it's very crucial to have water that is almost mineralized to be pushed on the membranes. Otherwise, you will destroy the membranes. So these beach wells provide us with a very good quality of water, and this has a positive aspect on the carbon footprint, as we don't need to backwash our filters so often. We backwash the filters only once a month, in comparison to a normal plant, a classical plant, where you have to backwash every day. And the most important aspect also is that we are almost not using chemicals at all for the pre-treatment, So this is very important. The second phase was built in 2016 with a smaller capacity of 100,000 cubic meters per day, roughly, extracted from the sea. This is a conventional sea extraction from the Indian Ocean. And our contract will last for 15 more years. This is the first point I wanted to point it out. The second point is related to the renewable energy. And this was also highlighted by Vincent. We have think about to incorporate solar panels, and I'm proud to and happy to confirm here and to announce that we will set into operation a solar farm for end of next spring. A solar farm that will have a capacity of 12 megawatts AC, that means 17 DC, that will cover 25% of our power needs. So we will reduce by 25% our power needs. So this also has a positive impact on our carbon footprint. We could have we have a space to put to have a more powerful solar farm. However, due to some regulation consideration, we were limited to 12 megawatts. The last point I wanted to point out is something which is also, I would say, very interesting in terms of reduction of environmental footprint, is our eco-dosing for the hypochlorite needed to disinfect and avoid the biofouling process that can happen in the seawater intake, the pipe, and the other tanks that follow the pumping station. So by closely balancing and monitoring our dosing of hypochlorite, we were happy not to clean the seawater intake pipe now for more than 2 years. So this is also something which is very interesting.
Thank you so much, Philippe. Vincent, my last question of this roundtable is for you. Looking to the future, what do you think are the next innovations in desalination?
Well, first, there's been a considerable improvement of desalination processes over the past 40 years, 50 years. And I think we can thank the early adopters of this technology, the Middle East countries, which have financed the development of all this industry, now available at low cost and low carbon footprint to the rest of the humanity. So that's a great tribute that we can pay to these countries. For the future, there is still progress to be made, and I guess we will see more and more energy efficient plants with better membranes, better recovery of the energy. We will see more and more compact plants, because desalination is a coastal activity where you have the cities, so the space is scarce. We will be, for sure, using we will work towards chemical-free plants. And finally, those plants will be digital. Digital in the sense that this is a way for us as plant designers and experts of operation of desalination plants, it's the way to help our clients take the best value out of their assets and make them a longer lifetime, improve the efficiency, etc., improve the economy. So digital will be everywhere in desalination in the next years, that is for sure.
Thank you so much to you both for having joined us. Now we move on to our third round table. Just a quick mention to the audience that you can still send in your questions for our speakers. As we saw in the first round table and the second round table, digitalization played an enormous role to cutting the energy consumption and environmental footprint. So I would like to ask Geneviève if she can give us a small introduction to smart water and digitalization in the water sector before we get going. Okay, so Vincent just ended up his presentation by talking about digital. So that's a good transition. The first thing I would like to highlight is digital should be seen as a means to enhance the skills of our operators that are on site. In our activity, digital is useless without people. Just thinking about the COVID crisis, Veolia has been able to maintain the continuity of essential services, first thanks to all the people that were on site, and secondly with the help of digital that is already well spread in Veolia's operation thanks to our upgrade digital platform. The use of digital tools, big data, digital twins, etc., is allowing us to optimize the operation of our systems. It is making the cities and the essential industries more resilient, and it helps to better anticipate and respond to unforeseen events. So we need to keep going in that direction to be even more digital, to prepare and anticipate all the extreme events related to climate change that we will have to face. Thank you, Geneviève. And now we would like to welcome our speakers for this final round table. Aude, Chief Digital Officer of Veolia Water Technologies, and Thomas Verbeek, Project Manager and Civil Engineer at Blue Colding in Denmark. Aude, Thomas, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Aude, my first question is for you. Can you further explain why digitalization is so important in the face of climate change?
Hello, everyone, and hello, Olivia. Thank you for having me as part of this session. Thank you, Geneviève, for introducing the session. So, yeah, why is digital so important in the context of climate change acceleration? Because precisely we live in a rapidly changing world. We live in a world where plant operators and plant managers need to make more and more complex decisions in a very short amount of time, and not necessarily having, for some of them, some who don't know water, all the know-how on process. So this is definitely where digital can help. This is where digital can help build a resilience roadmap and to manage not just the cost efficiency of energy and chemicals to treat water, or to be compliant with the output quality and the authorities. It is fundamental, of course. But it is more than that now. It is really the ability to manage the unforeseen events, as Geneviève was explaining in her introduction. Really manage, cope with the unforeseen event. How do you do with that? And definitely this is where precisely digital and expertise can be a great help and bring a lot of, peace of mind for the operators. Let me give you maybe a couple of examples. If you take things at the light of the extreme water events that happened this year in all the world, including in Europe, there are some impacts, of extreme weather events on water infrastructures, both networks and plants. We have phenomena, for example, in the sewer networks that we call sanitary sewer overflows or combined sewer overflows. It can really generate severe impacts on the environment and potentially, when they're not handled, on human health. That happens when stormwater literally exceeds the capacity of the sewer networks and generate overflows with mix of human waste and potentially industrial waste and pesticides and toxic things that can really pollute nature and that can also potentially impact human health. So we've got this phenomenon that can happen, when you've got stormy events, extreme events on sewer. You've got the same kind of impacts also on the plants. You can also have an impact on the infiltration and the inflow of your sewer networks. It's when the amount of water can really jeopardize or can really put at risk the structural integrity of your pipeline. So these are just examples, but just to show you that operators in Veolia, but our customer operators need to deal now with more and more of these events and make very quick decisions in a very short amount of time under a lot of pressure. So how can digital help in that? Well, first of all, digital is providing you access with data. Data that can be sensor data, for example, sensor data that you could have on your network or on your pumping station. So can provide you with real-time monitoring and alerts on the diagnostic on what is going on, in your water infrastructures. But we can go beyond that. We can go beyond just remote monitoring. We can go also in the interpretation of the events, So what is happening really, and what is it that I can do about it? So we've got a large, let's say, portfolio now of tools that we've been working on in Veolia. And some of these tools are quite advanced now. They can help us, for example, to diagnose based on data-driven approach, but also based on expertise. They can help us to diagnose the causes, for example, of inflow and infiltration. And by doing so, they could help us to, I would say, better manage the maintenance of your network, and better manage the efficiency of these maintenance actions that are taken. We can also today be able to predict what's going to happen by correlating the data of the network to the data of the weather. We have now solutions that enable us to predict the hydraulic capacity that is going to be needed for your sewer and for your plant. And by doing so, being able to adjust before, a few hours before actually the event happens, to adjust the capacity, the storing capacity on your network and on your plant, and really to I would say achieve the best optimum hydraulic capacity. So these are a few examples of how digital combined with expertise can help facing the acceleration of climate change.
Thank you. And what does it mean for a water asset to be digital?
A water asset to be digital, it can take a different kind of forms. Of course, it all starts with data. So that can be plant data, asset data, but that can be also external data. It can be weather data, it can be environmental data, it can be financial data. So it's first and foremost the ability to capture, to store, to pre-process this data. But data without know-how is not bringing you the insights. So that's really what we insist on in Veolia and the way we work. We really combine data with expertise, with know-how. We know what we're looking for. And it can take very different kind of forms. You know, it can be as simple as a descriptive performance indicator that will qualify the performance of your process, the performance of such and such piece of equipment. But it can go further. You know, it can take more sophisticated forms. For example, one sophisticated form, which I think is particularly relevant and efficient in the kind of context that we're going through, is the digital twin that Geneviève was mentioning just before. We have today such a digital twin that we use for wastewater operations, and that literally is replicating digitally on a cloud-based environment the different steps of treatment of a wastewater plant. And what it does is that on a near real-time basis, it really calculates what is the best optimal strategy to take in between the costs of your water treatment, so energy, chemicals, and so on, but also the quality of the output water. You know, it ensures that you're systematically compliant in output water, and it will control also the environmental footprint. You know, what is the carbon footprint of your emissions, and also what can you do to better reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. So it's really a very sophisticated tool that we have, combining in algorithmic process know-how together with AI, together with machine learning. So really treatments that the human eye is not seeing, in order to really help getting the best operation strategy. So that's something, for example, that we have been implementing in a very large wastewater treatment plant in the neighborhood of Milano in Italy. So it's a very vast wastewater treatment plant that is used for agricultural reuse. So that links also with what we said during the roundtable on reuse and you know how wastewater can be used for agricultural purposes. So the quality of your output water needs to be very good. And we have implemented such a digital twin now 9 months back. And since it's been implemented and that, you know, it's been running, we have achieved very substantial gains in energy consumption, particularly in biology, in aeration, where we have managed to gain almost 25% of savings on the energy which is consumed, which on this kind of plant is absolutely huge. And we have managed also to guarantee, you know, the good quality of the output water, and to gain within, you know, these 9 months, almost a year, the equivalent of, you know, 1,200 tons of CO2 saved, CO2 equivalent saved for this plant. So definitely this is, you know, such a technology in which we are investing and we think can bring a lot of, you know, peace of mind for operators and enable them to really focus on what is important.
Thank you, Aude. It's incredible what you've achieved in such a short time at the Noceda plant. Now let's move on to Denmark to find out about an exemplary utility, blue colding. Thomas, Denmark has proven to be a true leader in terms of developing sustainable water treatment and minimizing the environmental footprint of utilities. Can you tell us a bit more about how you started with digital and why?
Yes, certainly. Our digital platform has been driven in a mix of regulation and a strong desire to innovate and be sustainable. It's probably difficult to say when we started work with, or when we started with the digital process. First, online monitoring and sensors in the wastewater treatment plants have existed for many years. And originally, this was used to optimize the wastewater treatment in order to get the highest quality of water in the effluent. Basically based on Danish regulation, Danish taxes, to reduce the nitrogen and phosphorus we are sending out into receiving waters. Because in Denmark, wastewater treatment plants are taxed on the amount of nitrogen and phosphorus they send out. But through the years, we've enhanced or involved our process of online control of the wastewater treatment plant. This we've been doing in a close long-term partnership with a Danish company, Kruger, which is part of Veolia. We've added on to many aspects of the online monitoring that have made it possible for us to increase our energy efficiency, reduce the chemical use, as Ode also has mentioned, and reduce other operating costs as well. And at the same time, being able to increase the hydraulic capacity of the wastewater treatment plants while maintaining a high quality of water. In about 2011, Veolia helped us add on to and expand our digital platform by integrating our sewer system, a model of our sewer system, into along with our main wastewater treatment plant here in Kolding. This integration of the sewer system with the wastewater treatment plant utilized the fact of trying to optimize the retention basin and the retention basin's capacity out in the sewer system, so that we, during rainfall, could control how much water we sent further through the system and onto the wastewater treatment plant. And as Ode Oswald was mentioning, the process of forecasting a rainfall event or seeing that a rainfall was coming made it possible to increase the wastewater treatment plant's hydraulic capacity in the hours leading up to becoming rain events. This system has worked very well. The past 10 years has been added on to various points, but it also showed that the amount of combined sewer overflow that we had from Kolding, with an environmental impact of our receiving waters, was reduced quite enormously. And at the same time, we could also identify that we could save construction of further retention basins because we could control and utilize the basins that we already had in an optimal way. In the later years here, Blue Kolding, we've had more and more focus on sustainability and our environmental impact. We have one of our mottos is that we don't really consider wastewater to be something that just needs to be treated and be sent out. We are trying to reuse, or not reuse wastewater, but to obtain all the resources that are available in the wastewater. For many years, the nutrients in wastewater sludge have been utilized and have been reused for agricultural purposes, where it has been spread on farming land as fertilizer. We have also built a biogas reactor where wastewater sludge creates biogas, and the biogas is burned through a gas generator producing electricity for use in the wastewater treatment. We have lately also introduced a blue grid or smart grid system where we are working with the electricity prices on a demand response sort of way, trying to shut down some of our high energy using elements when the energy prices are high, and then instead using electricity when the prices drop. So these are some of the things that our digital platform has given us possibilities to reduce our environmental impact and to be more efficient in our daily work.
Thank you, Thomas. And looking into the future, how do you think digital solutions will help your utility be more resilient in the face of climate change? And what are your goals in terms of environmental footprint?
Well, I think in the future, we most likely will see a lot of more focus on the amount of data that we're generating. We're continually installing more and more sensors, more monitoring points throughout the sewer system, in pumping stations, in detention basins, combined sewer overflows, and all over the wastewater treatment plants. And this generates enormous amounts of data. And as Aude also was saying, the data is so massive that our operators have would have difficulty understanding these amounts of data. So in the future, I'm quite certain we're going to need some more data robots or artificial intelligence that can translate these enormous amounts of data and make them more operational so that we can flag certain processes with green, yellow, or red flags. This would make it easier for our staff and our operational people to understand, is this something that's working as it should be working, or does it need some sort of attention? Is it a critical situation that we're standing over? Making data more available on an operational level is an important issue in the future. This also combined with the fact that government and regulatory institutions are more and more interested in our reports and our reporting of our environmental impact, our CO2 footprint, what is our actual water and energy use, how much water and which quality of water are we sending out into the receiving waters, and especially also these combined sewer overflows, which we're continually trying to reduce. The requirements that we're being met with on reporting also demand large amounts of data and processing of these data.
Thank you so much. We can all learn from Denmark's expertise in the matter. Aude, I would like to ask you the last question of our roundtable. How do you envision the future of digitalization?
Well, actually, I think that there are a lot of insights that Thomas provided us. You know, it almost sounds like it was easy, which I think was not Thomas, by the way. But the level, I would say, of holistic optimization between the plant and the network is really giving us the way. The insights also that you provide on the reuse, you know, of the wastewater resource in order to really re-inject them into energy is also very, very insightful. I think that, yeah, the challenge of managing and processing this huge quantity of data is definitely in our way. So we have built and we are, you know, working on these treatments that will help us to be faster in order to build these insights. So I'm absolutely, you know, convinced that you know, we will manage to you know, build these tools that will facilitate the management of this vast quantity of data. To answer Thomas, we're working on that. But definitely, yeah, big data, AI are definitely in the way of the future of digital treatments for water. But this will be not done without expertise, without human experts to show the way of where we're going. So definitely my conviction is that digital and expertise can help to build a roadmap of resilience for water operation and to be able to help operators bring them more peace of mind and more easiness in their daily operations.
Thank you so much, Aude. We'll be truly looking forward to seeing how digitalization moves forward. Now we will begin the Q&A session where our audience has sent in through some questions. If you haven't sent in your questions and wish to do so, please do so now. Our first question goes to Pierre.
Yes.
Yes. Hi, Pierre. Why does the Vendée region need to increase its potable water, and why was recycling wastewater the best option?
Yes. So, in fact, it's the activity over there is mainly tourism. Sorry, and in summertime, you have the population that increase a lot. The place is very nice, as you saw on the presentation by the Vendée manager, and the water is coming from inside the country. So it's something like the Jaunet reservoir is at 35 kilometers, if I remember well, from the seashore. So basically, the population is where the water is not, and vice versa. So they needed to plus the fact that in fact the population growing, the Jaunet reservoir does not have, if I remember well, the capability to expand its reserve. So the question was, they studied during a long time between desalination and wastewater reuse, and they selected the wastewater reuse as a more sustainable project, with that resource being the only one, more or less, growing with the population. So that's the origin of it.
Thank you, Pierre. Let me ask. Our next question is for Vincent and Philippe. How resilient are desalination installations when faced with unforeseen weather events like hurricanes or pollution events like oil spills?
I will respond partially. Maybe Vincent can add some elements. But in terms of climatic events, we faced 2-3 weeks back here a tropical cyclone, which has a major impact on the coastal area, and we were not affected by this cyclone. Now regarding because we have mainly our beach wells that provide water that is offset of the sea. It takes from the groundwater. It is seawater, but it takes it from the ground itself. So if you have a cyclone hitting us or an oil spill or whatever, we are not affected by these events.
Yes, I will. The case of Mansour Desal plant is a perfect example of protection against climatic events. And I remember, because of these beach wells, which are fantastic protection for the quality of the seawater, incoming seawater. I remember during the Gulf War, there was a bit of concern about the possibility to have oil spillage in the Gulf, which was a major threat to all desalination plants because they are pumping seawater. And so I remember at that time there was a lot of protection that was set around, like fine mesh nets that were spread around intake works to make sure that we would not swallow. And we, I guess that some of the desal plant had to shut down for 1 day or two, but it was not a major disaster. The most, not at all. There was some good resiliency of those plants at that date. And the most recent example that we've had is in the Caribbean with the Irma hurricane that hit strongly Saint Martin, where Veolia used to have a desalination plant. And the island was devastated by Irma. It was a real nightmare. And then putting back water into service, water production in service is a must for everyone. So Veolia did very well at that time because we could first send a mobile desalination unit that could produce locally, but also the plant itself. And when we talk about resiliency, the plant was very interesting because it was in Saint Martin, we have barrels. We have a barrel, which is so this metallic vessel that I was talking about. And this is a very strong unit. You can have a hurricane all around. It is still there. It will not fly away. And we could restart water. Thanks to that, we could restart water production after something like 3 days, thanks to the commitment of all our people there. So overall, desalination plants are quite resilient to natural events.
Thank you so much to you both. And since we're running out of time, I would like to ask the last question. What are the main barriers to adopting digital technologies in the water industry?
I guess that the barriers that we've faced, talking, with our customers on these digital solutions, one major, that keeps coming back because it's important for everyone, is cybersecurity. And how do we guarantee, that these digital solutions are cyber secure? So this is definitely a topic of value and a topic of, critical interest for all our customers. It is a critical topic for Veolia also. We take it very, very seriously. We've got a very active cybersecurity community, which is really connected with the digital teams and with the plant teams. So we have guidelines, in order to really ensure the cybersecurity on each and every segment, from the connected device in a plant, up to the exposition of data on cloud platforms. So we've got very strict guidelines, we've got regular audits, but definitely cybersecurity is, a big topic. Another topic that I've faced in the discussion that we have with customers is that sometimes the organizations are not ready to, let's say, consume or to welcome service models. There are more companies that are buying, let's say, or investing in equipment or investing in plants, and less prepared to invest in services. So there's also this transition, and because most of these solutions, are really based on service models. This is also another frame that we have faced. So definitely I think the adoption of these digital solutions come together with education, with really education and with discussions, on what it takes to build expertise on top of data, in terms of business model, but also in terms of tooling and how you secure your assets.
Thank you so much, Aude, and thank you to all the audience for sending us your questions. Now we will have our closing remarks. As Geneviève pointed out at the beginning of the webinar, climate change is accelerating and climate-related disasters are becoming more frequent, with record flooding and more persistent droughts all around the world. As we heard, the water sector is the first to feel these devastating effects. Throughout this webinar, we learned of several effective ways of tackling these challenges, from wastewater reclamation through desalination and finally digitalization. It is vital for the industry to put in place efficient solutions to mitigate global warming, and to do so now. Geneviève, can you give us a few last words?
Okay, thank you. So I'm sure that now you are all convinced that water is definitely one of the main markers of climate change, with impact which can already been seen. We can just admit that climate change is already there. Remember, 50% the expected increase in water demand in the first half of this century, 5 billion of people that are expected to live in water scarcity area, and 50%, which is the percentage in the past 20 years of flood events among all weather-related events. So this workshop, I think, was great because it showed concrete examples of solutions that already exist to help cities and industrial customers to adapt to climate change, to make cities, to make water utilities also efficient contributors of the decarbonization of the cities. All the solutions already exist and can be implemented, provided the governance and finance mechanism are in place to deliver them at a suitable pace. And this is the key, to deliver them at a suitable pace. I remember as well that public acceptance is key, especially when developing alternative resource projects. And I remember as well that public can also be a strong advocate of these new solutions. So I think we should remember the 83% mentioned by Pierre, which is the percentage of the French people that are already in favor of these solutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Geneviève, and thank you to all our speakers and our audience for having joined us today. We hope you found it insightful.